Good morning, everyone. I trust that you all are having a very good morning. It's beautiful outside. I hope that you will take a few moments to go outside and enjoy the beauty and the warm weather all around us. Today, I want to give my devotional I take it from a lady, a spiritual woman that I had spoken to several years back. I was discussing with her about an issue about just feeling like I wasn't being used of God the way that I felt called to, the way that I wanted to, and I was just going through kind of pretty much a time in my life where doors were just closed for me, and just trying to just seek God's will for that time period. And God used that woman multiple times to help me through some spiritual issues that I was having at the time. And many times she used visual images to get her point across. And I'm a very visual person, so I believe that God just used her in order to speak to me. So I felt yesterday when I was praying about what to speak about today, I just felt in my heart that I was to give you all this, that I felt like some other people needed it for this period of time in which we're isolated, we're sheltered at home, and we're not doing the ministries that God's called us to do. We're not able to be involved at the level that we normally are during the times before COVID. So I just wanted to encourage everyone today who feels isolated, who feels left out, and I hope that this blesses you too. My scripture text today is coming from Jeremiah chapter 18, verses 1 through 3. It says, "The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise, and go to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels." That is my scripture text for today. The story that the lady told me, I wanted to give you that same story. So she was saying how that Jesus, of course, is the potter. And she was given the illustration that Jesus goes into his potter's house every day. And in the early mornings, he'll come into the potter's house. And in that house, his work table is filled with all these pots and pottery and clay. And everything is at different stages. Some are almost done, some are done, and just needs to be sent out. Others are in all form of stages of being worked on. There's some that hadn't even started yet. There's broken pots and vessels there that are broken, that needed to be fixed. They needed to be mended. Along the walls are other pots. Many of them are done. Many of them are beautiful. They have all types of beauty to them. You could tell that they're strong vessels, that they would hold a lot of water. They would hold a lot of oil. They would hold a lot of substance in them. And yet they're sitting against the wall on shelves. But then you have other pots up there. They're finished. They're not quite as beautiful though, but they're finished. You can tell that they don't have, as much beauty, that somebody would overlook them. There's also the pots that are broken, that was placed up on these shelves. And you're thinking, okay, why would all the pots have, or all the shelves have pots that are finished as well as broken pots? And each day when Jesus walks in, of course, the pots all represent people and our lives. And every morning when Jesus walks into his house, he goes and he sits at his table and he works on the pots. He works on these vessels. And sometimes he'll take new clay and start new with a fresh one. Sometimes he'll finish it. Sometimes he'll set it aside and grab another pot or start another one, or go and fix a pot that that was broken, and he may take that one. Other times he may take something off the shelf and bring it onto his table and work at it. To some eyes, you're like, what is he doing? Is he actually, how is he picking and choosing who he's going to work on that day and what he's going to do? And the lady, of course, that was speaking into my life, she was telling me that my vessel is up on the shelf. He finished the work in me. He finished, and he made my pot very strong, but he put me on a shelf. He put me up there while others were coming in and getting the pots and saying, I want this pot, and I want this pot, and I want this pot. Many times my pot was overlooked. My vessel was overlooked. And during that time that I was talking to her, I was just very frustrated. I'm like, why is my vessel being overlooked when I've got all these talents, all these skills, all these abilities, but they're overlooked? And while others are being picked up and taken. And sometimes Jesus would tell somebody, hey, go take this pot. I have a work for it at this location or this place. And other times people would come in and get the pots and say, hey, I have need of this pot and this pot and this one. And yet I was just being at stalemate, and I was very frustrated at that time period. And the friend told me something so profound that it stuck with me, and God has spoken through me so many times about this. She said, Lamanda, although your pot's sitting there, not being used, your vessel's not being used the way you want to, the way that you feel like God's called you to. But during all of that time that you're sitting there, you're watching the master at work. You're watching what he's doing and how he's doing it. And you're listening to his words. You're listening to his heartbeat. You're listening as he's molding these vessels and making them into something beautiful. And as he sets something aside, you can hear him say, I'm just not finished with you yet. You just need to sit here a little bit and wait until it's my timing. And she said, you get to hear the master's heartbeat. You get to hear it. So many of these pots, they may get beautiful pots. They may get built, and they're beautiful, and they're strong, and they're sturdy, and then they get sent out. But the work is so quick that they don't have time to hear the master's voice as long as you do. You don't get to hear his heartbeat and the love that he has for each of his vessels. They don't get to hear how much he cares about each and every individual, whether how beautiful they are or how marred they are, or even if they have substance that's coming out of them that's not good. It's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be sturdy. You get to hear the way the master loves on each and every one of those vessels. And she said there's times when the master will look up onto his shelves, and he'll look up to you even when somebody else is overlooking you. He looks up at you and he says, I'm not done with you, daughter. I have a special work for you to do. And when the time is right, you're going to come off of that shelf and you're going to be used mightily of God. But until then, you're doing what you've been called to do. You are sitting there and you are listening to me. You are learning my heartbeat. You are taking time to study me and to study how I want things done and how my people should be drawn to me. And not only during that during this time in which the lady was telling me, I'm ministering to all those broken pots around me because I have listened to the master's voice, because I know the master's heartbeat. Then I have the ability to minister when the master leaves the room for the night and he's got other stuff he has to do. And the room is still and quiet and the master's not in the room. I'm still able to pour into those other vessels that are in there. The broken vessels, the half-made vessels, the ones that have barely even started, the clay that hasn't even started yet, that I am able to pour into them just like the master would have done if he was in there at that moment. And I find that that's so powerful, and God has just spoken to me so many times during times in my life where it just didn't seem like my ministry was going anywhere, or that my skills weren't being used the way that I would have wanted it to, or dry seasons in my life where I just didn't feel like things were going the way that I wanted to. I think about that, and I'm thinking about in this dry season, or in this time of not being used, or in this time when I'm kind of like in the background, or just in a time when I'm just not where I want to be personally, because I've got so much zeal and so much desire, and when God has pulled back the reins and said, no, daughter, this is not your time yet, this is not your place yet, that I use that time to minister, to use that time to get others to a place that God can use them during that time. And that's just such a powerful thought. It just stirs up something within my heart. So during this time in which we're isolated, many of us are not being used in the ministry that we want to be right now, or there are many of my friends who are praise singers and Sunday school teachers and minister in nursing homes and outreach, evangelism, all of these different things. And right now we can't do any of those. We are in a place where we've had to pull back the reins, and God said that we can't go there right now. It's a time in which we need to stay at home, shelter at home, keep our families safe, keep those around us safe. And during that time, there's so many of my friends right now that I can feel their hurt, their desire to get back into the house of God, where they can worship, where they can sing, and they can feel that presence. And so many of my friends have discussed how that at the having church at home, you just don't have the freedom that you would have at church in order to worship and to praise, especially, when there's unsaved loved ones, or just or little kids running around, and you're just not at a point where you're free to worship as much. I want to encourage everyone. God sees where we are all at right now. He knows that we are sheltered at home. He knows that we are in a time of isolation, and that we are to but during this time in which we're not doing our normal ministries, or we're not out among the people that we normally are around, there's still ministry for us to do. There's still a work for us to do. We can reach out to the hurting. And so many of my friends that I've reached out to, they're hurting right now. Even the good Christian people who are strong Christians, they're hurting right now because they're just isolated, and it is such a difficult time when they just, and just being around the same people and not being able to really escape or find that outlet that we normally would use. It's a difficult time for so many right now. But I want to encourage you and say that God knows where you're at, and God's saying, hey, I know where you're at. He's looking at you, and he's saying, my daughter, my son, I know where you're at right now. I know the hard times that you're going through right now. It is okay. It is fine. I know where you're at. You're going to come back off the shelf. There's going to be a day where I'm going to release you back into the ministry, back into the harvest field. But right now, use this time. Minister to each other. Minister to those vessels that are around you. Minister to those. You may be strong one moment, but somebody else may not be. I remember when the isolation first started, about 8 weeks ago, I believe it is for me now. At that point, I was on a spiritual high. 6-8 months ago, if this had happened, it would have been a totally different story. I was not in a good place in which I would have been able to survive like I am now. But during the course of the past 6, 8, 10 months, God has done a work in me, such a spiritual work in me that I can't even begin to explain the healing He's done in my life, the spiritual, just filling up my tank. And right before COVID happened, I had just come off of a missions trip, so I was on a spiritual high from that. Then a ladies retreat the same week I got back, a couple days after I got back from the missions trip. And then we had church revival just a few days after that. You're talking about 2 weeks of just jam-packed of just spiritual, and my spiritual accountability partners, I mean, they just had me, they were just filling me up so much, and I was just, my tank was so full. And then all of a sudden we went into this this time of isolation, but my tank is still full. And then I was able to just continue to fill myself with so many sermons and songs and Bible studies and Zoom Bible studies and everything, and just able to keep my tank full, and so that I can continue to minister. And I'm finding in this time, maybe it's just because I'm at a much slower pace than normal, and I have more time because I'm not in the hustle bustle of taking kids here, taking their girls there, and running here and there. And I have more time now at home, and I find that I'm able to give myself more to devotion time to keep my tank full. I find myself that I have more time to minister to my friends, those that are broken, to reach out to people and say, hey, you're going to make it. I'm there for you. You have what it takes. So I just encourage you all today that no matter where this time finds you, no matter where you're at, no matter what your vessel looks like right now, whether your vessel is full and you're just ready to go out and do, or whether you're hurting right now and just struggling with things, I encourage you, just take the time out to fill yourself up and to reach out to those. And sometimes the best thing you can do when you're hurting is reach out to others. I find that is a huge healing process for me. When I'm hurting, when I'm going through things, many times I'll reach out to someone else and encourage them, because within that, it also encourages me. Also, one last thought I'd like to leave you is Isaiah 40:31. It says, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They're going to mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Use this time of waiting. Use this time when we're on the shelves and we're just sitting on the master's table. Let's use this time to wait upon the Lord, to have our strength renewed, to be renewed and refreshed and restored. I know restored is a word that, if there was a word for 2020 that God had given me, it's that there's going to be a lot of restoration happen in my life this year. I've seen it happen spiritually in my life, lots of restoration spiritually. I'm claiming it for other areas in my life, that there's going to be restoration happen, and I'm claiming that. I'm waiting on the Lord. I'm letting Him renew my strength, renew what's inside of me. So, and I encourage you today, be encouraged, stay strong in the Lord, find the strength that you have within you, find the strength in God, and let's encourage each other. We're going to make it through this time, and we're going to come out on the other side blessed. And what a spiritual time we're going to have when this is over, when we're able to get back into the house of God and to worship God with all of our might. I just think that we're going to have such revival during this time. So stay encouraged, my friends, and God bless.